Hello, my darling grandchildren. It's Nana, your storyteller, and I'm here to tell you two more stories. The first one is called The Frugal Tailor, and there's no author listed and no origin of where the story might have first become known. Tailors were very popular in England, and so it may be that the story began in England. One day, there was a tailor, a very fine tailor he was. His reputation preceded him. He was also very frugal. That means he never wasted anything. And so one day, a very rich landowner came to the frugal tailor with a bolt of the most lovely fine cloth. And he said to the tailor, "Please make me a suit with this cloth, and I will pay you handsomely." So the frugal tailor stayed up all night long, and he cut, and he sewed, and he snipped, and he stitched, and in the morning he had made a beautiful fine suit out of that cloth. So he took it to the landowner. The landowner was thrilled. It was a wonderful suit. He tried it on, it fit perfectly. The frugal tailor went back to his shop, and he was starting to clean up the materials that were left, and he decided, now, just a minute, there's enough material here to make something else. And so the frugal tailor stayed up all night long, and he cut, and he sewed, and he snipped, and he stitched, and in the morning he had made himself a beautiful topcoat from that material. He loved that topcoat, and he wore it every day, and he wore it every day, and he wore it every day until it was worn out. Just as he was getting ready to throw it out, he thought, just a minute, there's enough material here for me to make something else. So the frugal tailor stayed up all night, and he cut, and he sewed, and he snipped, and he stitched, and in the morning he had made himself a beautiful jacket. He loved that jacket. He wore it every day. He wore that jacket every day, and he wore that jacket every day until it was worn out and ready to be thrown out. And just as he was getting ready to throw it out, he thought, just a minute, there's enough material here to make something else. So the frugal tailor stayed up all night, and he cut, and he sewed, and he snipped, and he stitched, and in the morning he had made himself a beautiful fine vest. He loved that vest, and he wore it every day, and he wore it every day, and he wore that vest every day until it was worn out. But just as he was preparing to throw it out, you guessed it, he thought to himself, just a minute, there's enough material here that I can make something else. So the frugal tailor stayed up all night, and he cut, and he sewed, and he snipped, and he stitched, and in the morning he had made himself a very fine cap. He loved that cap, and he wore that cap every day. He wore that cap every day, and he wore that cap every day until it was worn out. Just as he was getting ready to throw it out, he thought to himself, just a minute, there's enough material here that I can make something else. So the frugal tailor stayed up all night, and he cut, and he sewed, and he snipped, and he stitched, and in the morning he had made himself a fine tie. Oh, he loved that tie. He wore that tie every day. He wore that tie every day. He wore that tie every day until it was worn out. As he was getting ready to throw it out, he thought to himself, just a minute, I think there's enough material left here for me to make something else. So the frugal tailor stayed up all night, and he cut, and he sewed, and he snipped, and he stitched, and in the morning he had made himself a fine cloth-covered button. He sewed that button on a shirt, and he wore that shirt every day. He wore that shirt every day, and he wore that shirt every day until it was worn out. Just as he was getting ready to throw it out, he thought to himself, just a minute, just a minute. I think there's enough material left here for a story. And so he made up the story, and he told me this story, and now I've told you this story, and I hope that you will have a chance to tell this story to someone that you like and that they enjoy it as much as I did. That was the story of the Frugal Tailor. I have some jokes for you. Maybe you would like to share them with somebody that you know. So the first one is, where does a gingerbread man make his bed? Well, a gingerbread man makes his bed on a cookie sheet. Knock, knock. Who's there? Who? Who? I didn't know you were an owl. Okay, story number 2. This story is a story that you may have already heard at one point or another, or maybe you've read the book. Maybe you have the book. This story has a lot of different endings and a lot of different tellings. So mine is perhaps different than you have ever heard before, and maybe you have heard it before. This is called Henny Penny. Henny Penny was a chicken, and as a chicken, she loved to get on the ground and scratch around looking for bugs and seeds and nuts and stuff. So there was Henny Penny in the farmyard, and she was scratching around underneath an oak tree when suddenly an acorn fell and boop, bumped her on the top of the head. And she looked up and she said, oh, the sky is falling. Oh, the sky is falling. I must go tell the king. And so Henny Penny started chugging out of the farmyard, and all of a sudden she looked over the pond, and there in the pond was Ducky Lucky swimming around. Ducky Lucky said, hey, Henny Penny, where are you going? Henny Penny said, well, the sky is falling, Ducky Lucky, the sky is falling, and I must tell the king. I've got to go to the palace. And Ducky Lucky said, well, that sounds like an important mission. I'll go with you. And so Ducky Lucky climbed out of the pond, and he joined Henny Penny, and off they started again on their trip to the palace. And as they came around a corner, there they saw Goosey Lucy. And Goosey Lucy said, where are you going? Where are you going in such a hurry? And Henny Penny said, well, the sky is falling, Goosey Lucy, the sky is falling, and we must warn the king. And Goosey Lucy said, well, I can see that that's a very important task, and so I will go with you. And so Goosey Lucy and Ducky Lucky and Henny Penny started off on their run towards the palace again. And they're running and running along the path. Suddenly they come upon Turkey Lurkey. Turkey Lurkey says, hey, where are you going, friends? And Henny Penny says, well, Turkey Lurkey, we're going to see the king because the sky is falling and we must warn him. And Turkey Lurkey said, well, that sounds like a very important job indeed, and I will go with you. And so Turkey Lurkey joined Goosey Lucy and Ducky Lucky and Henny Penny, and onward they went towards the palace. And as they were going along, they suddenly saw Foxy Loxy in the middle of the road. And Foxy Loxy said, dear friends, where are you going in such a big hurry? And Henny Penny said, oh, Foxy Loxy, we're in a very big hurry because the sky is falling and we must warn the king. And Foxy Loxy said, well, I can understand that that's a very important endeavor, and I will go with you. However, I can tell you that I have a shortcut to the palace that will save you time and energy. If you'll follow me, I'll show you where the shortcut is. And so Henny Penny And Ducky Lucky and Goosey Lucy and Turkey Lurkey all got in line behind Foxy Loxy, and they followed him as he took them into the forest. And they're in the forest walking around following Foxy Loxy, and they came upon a hole in the side of a riverbank. Well, they didn't know it, but that was his home. And inside were his wife and his children, who were all hungrily waiting for him to bring them dinner. And just as he was about ready to open the door, who should come along but Doggy Woggy. And Doggy Woggy said, I've been watching the whole time, and I saw what you've been doing, Foxy Loxy, and I think it's a bad thing, and I'm going to bite you in the butt. And so the Doggy Woggy took off after Foxy Loxy, and off they ran. And Henny Penny's just standing there like, nah, I'm not sure what to do now. Well, just as she was thinking that, the door to the hole opens up, and Mrs. Foxy Loxy's there, and she snaps her jaws trying to catch Henny Penny on the head. But Henny Penny was too fast, and she jumped back, and she was so scared that she turned around and ran back to the farmyard, and all her friends ran with her because they'd seen what was going to happen. And they ran back, and they were safe and sound in the farmyard, and they decided never again to try and leave the farmyard, especially with Foxy Loxy. And that's the end of Henny Penny. I hope you've enjoyed both these stories, dear children. I love you very much, and I hope you'll be able to look at these stories whenever you want, and that you'll share them with friends or family. Thanks. Love you. See you. Bye.